I'm Chris Hartshorn, the Chief Research Officer at Lux Research. I'm sitting today with Bernhard Mohr, the Managing Director for Corporate Venturing at Evonik. Large organisation, innovative organisation. One of the things that I've always discovered in working with executives and innovation executives across many corporations is there's passion, there's energy, there's excitement. Bernhard, what gets you excited and energized in the role that you have leading Evonik's venturing activities? What gets you fired up?
Okay, well, good afternoon, Chris. I think you can be passionate and energized by things you are convinced about it. I think conviction really is the key for all of it. And we are convinced, and I'm personally convinced about innovation as the key driver for sustainable innovation, and within the field of innovation, of course, also open innovation as driver. And personally, I like to work with entrepreneurs, with innovators, and help them to bring their innovation forward and grow them.
Yeah. Okay. So that's interesting. It leads me into an obvious question. How does corporate venturing, play into the overall open innovation activities or the technology scouting activities that Evonik engages in? I mean, it's presumably got a specific role, specific goal. Tell me about that integration. How easy, difficult is it to form part of this broader open innovation function?
Yeah, we have aggregated our innovation and especially open innovation efforts underneath our Chief Innovation Officer, Peter Nagler. So corporate venturing is the latest addition to this family. We do have, and we also did have in the past, scouting. We have corporate foresight. We have underneath Peter Nagler, we have Creavis, our strategic R&D operation, and we have functions like university relationships. So innovation plays a pivotal role in our efforts, and especially open innovation, besides, of course, all the efforts we have allocated within our businesses.
So how broad is your scope? How defined is the scope? Can you go wherever you want, or is there a framework that you're have to operate in within the broader corporate strategy?
Yeah, what the company did before we decided to set it up was a project that ran for a bit over 12 months. So there was a very careful thinking on how should we set this up, what will be our targets, how do we work with the business units, how do we work with corporate functions, and of course, how do we integrate all of this in our open innovation activities. So there has been this project before, and of course, this is an ongoing dialogue we have, so we meet frequently with the colleagues to really align our efforts. We have the objective, we are a strategic investor, so whatever we do has to be strategic to the company. So our investment efforts are targeted to really sustain our core business, to help the company to move into adjacent businesses and industries, but also build the bridge by working together with startup companies into new industries, technologies, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next year, but maybe 3 or 5 or 10 years out.
Where is that balance? So you mentioned multiple aspects, so help serve the core, help find adjacencies, and then help look longer term.
Yeah.
Presumably there is a portfolio management aspect to that, which end of the spectrum appears to be working best, at least at the outset of the venturing function in Evonik? Is there one place where you have to play more now, and will it change over time potentially as the venturing activities mature?
Yeah. Well, as you mentioned, we are a most recent organization. So we started our activities about 15 months ago. Yeah. So we still are building up also our experience. So we of course have a plan how we want to do this. At this point in time, certainly the focus will be more on what is closer to the core.
Okay.
And once we have built up a reputation there, once we have shown the value we can bring to Evonik, but also the value we can bring to our portfolio companies, I think gradually we'll also move a bit more to the outside and a bit more into projects that will be on a longer time horizon.
Got it. So important to establish credibility early for a corporate venturing function?
Absolutely.
Right. So what sort of timeframes I think need to be realized for that credibility? So it's a venturing function, there are exits and there are outcomes from investing in startup companies, it's impossible to accelerate. So does this mean 2 years, 3 years, 5 years for putting those initial victories up and that initial credibility?
Yeah. I think first of all, and I think this is very important to mention, we see corporate venturing as a long-term effort. So, and I think this is also understood within the company that venturing, and especially if you want to do venturing successfully and in a very sustainable way, you have to have a long-term time horizon. So we know this is nothing where we can see quick wins in 2 or 3 years. So we also think on a longer time frame, and we also know, and this is part of the venture capital industry, that failure is part of this. And as we all know, typically losses of companies happen first before you get into exits. And this was also a very important part when we set this up, to really also make sure that everyone in the company understands the concept of venture capital. So of course we would hope that we early on have a couple of good successes. We already have, through our venture capital activities, a very strong deal flow. So even though that we have not yet done a direct investment, we were already able to really bring interesting innovation to Evonik, to set up cooperations between our parent and startup companies. So we already see the onset of our activities and receive a very good feedback from our operational businesses concerning the value we are able to bring to the company.
Right. And you're, I guess, blessed in that you've been part of a more mature, established corporate venturing function in a previous life. And now you're part of a newly formed venturing function. Distinctions, benefits, challenges, how would you compare the two experiences, being the 5-year venturing effort versus the just starting out effort? Does it give you more freedom? I'm just curious to hear if it makes any difference at all based on your current experiences.
Yeah, well, as you correctly said, as an organization, Evonik Corporate Venturing, we are a new organization. The people we have in the team are long-standing experts with a long-standing reputation. So we are well set from the people, from the team. What we need to do is to establish a reputation as an organization. This is certainly what we need to build up, and there are players out there, they can look back to 5, 10, 15, 25 years of existence in the industry. Yeah. So certainly this is something we have to work on to show to the outside world that we are a very valuable partner and great investor for them.
Right. I guess since you've obviously spent time looking at best practices and looking at companies that do this well, who did you look to? I mean, when you looked at best practices, are there companies you looked at that you thought, yep, okay, let's replicate that? Or let's replicate the best features of these 3 or 4 entities that appear to be doing the strategic thing that you also want to do as part of Evonik.
Yeah.
Who did you look to?
Well, we looked at our peers, of course, but we also looked at companies outside our industry, like Intel, but we also looked on purely financial investors. I think you need to be a bit careful. I think you cannot just go out there and replicate. You also have to look on your company DNA. What is it your company is looking for? What are the strategic targets of your company? Yeah. And how do you use this outside knowledge? How do you use whatever you see from your peers? So I would say whatever works for corporate venturing, in a very successful way, not necessarily also is the most appropriate approach for company B.
So I mean, the key takeaway from that is that there is nothing formulaic about corporate venturing. There's no way to put really hard metrics that can be used across a range of different industries, a range of different venturing activities. You've got to figure it out for yourself.
you need to figure it out for yourself. I think there are a couple of do's,
Okay.
and I think it's always a good thing to learn about the don'ts. So we looked, of course, what should we do, but at the same time, we also looked very closely to the things we said, well, what shouldn't we do?
Okay, so I'll finish with that question. Tell me one key don't. What shouldn't a company do when setting up a venturing function? You know, do's, don'ts. Give me a don't.
Okay. We, of course, always are looking for a strategic fit for the company. But at the same time, you need to watch very closely to not limit the company in its overall growth by putting some conditions around them. So we're also looking to really generate a win-win situation which allows us to really work with the company in a successful way. But at the same time, we are very careful in not limiting our portfolio companies in their overall growth perspectives.
Right, got it. Interesting. No, I think it's a great insight. That's a big risk that a lot of strategics run into, trying to put the square peg in the wrong hole in the big picture of things. Bernhard, thank you for your time. It's been very interesting.
Thank you, Chris.